Hello and good evening. Welcome to those attending and also those watching on the Council YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. The details of business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible online under the live broadcast. For those present in the room and attending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. For those solely observing in the room today, you may wish to know that the camera is only angled away from the public gallery where you are sitting. At the end of public part of the meeting, when the committee moves to discuss confidential matters, the live broadcast from YouTube will be cut, but we have none of that today. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be heard or be audible when the online microphone is switched off, and I'll ask you to come to the table to speak there. We are not expecting any fire drills, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building at the designated points. If you have your mobile phone or tablet devices, for those in the room, please switch off any mobile phones and devices before the meeting starts and put them on silent. Please note the councillors on the committee will use their laptops or their tablets during the meeting to view the agenda and the paperwork. The residents' feedback forms will be on the table there. They're also online underneath, and if you would like to fill them in and give them back to Democratic Services, they'd be absolutely pleased. Please ensure that you identify which item you have an interest in. If you have got a declaration of interest, I'll be coming to you in a minute, Councillor Borough. And if it's pecuniary or non-pecuniary, and give reasons for you have an interest. Members need not declare an interest in an item which the agenda where they have already listed their interest in the registered of interest. Furthermore, do not need to declare any interest just because, for example, you're a ward councillor. We have no part 2 items. Firstly, I would like to have apologies for absence first, Anisha.
No apologies.
And something that we rarely do, but we have to elect a new vice chairman. And I propose Steve Tutwell. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Brightman. All those in favour? No objections. Fantastic. Declarations of interest and matters coming before this meeting. Councillor Beale.
Chairman,
microphone, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I got contacted by the residents of item 10, and I have a non-pecuniary interest on that one. So, shall I leave the room or what?
Terry, if you'd like to.
It would be sensible to leave the room, even though it's not compulsory, but just to avoid the appearance of bias. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we agree the minutes of the last meeting? Yeah. All nods saying agreeing. Okay. Matters have been notified in advance or urgent. You have none, do we? Agenda item 7 is being withdrawn, and that will come back to us on the next committee. It's permanently withdrawn. Okay, fine. It's permanently withdrawn. It will not be coming back at all. There we go. I also have to declare that I have been given some additional information, and I've asked officers whether we would accept that or not. And unfortunately, because we don't feel that we've had enough time to digest it, we will not accept it. So. And we've also already done. So I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way it goes. Secondly, I'd like to introduce everybody. First of all, I have my councillors who will be voting members are Councillor Kaufman, Councillor Brightman, Councillor Valana, my Vice Chair Steve Cotwell, the Officer Team Alan Tilley, Nisha Burnham, Principal Planning Officer. Welcome. It's her first. Be nice, please. Kate Crosby, the team leader, and Ross, my planning service manager, and my legal, which is very important, Kerry Munro.
Good evening, everybody. Hello, on YouTube.
And obviously, we can't do anything without Anisha, and she's here on the thing. if you are going to have you'll be speaking, you'll have a traffic light system. Please observe it. It is green. You'll have your first 4 minutes. Amber means you've got a minute left. And then red means you have to stop. And I do stop. I'm not one of those chairmen that let you ramble on. I will say, that's it, and off we go. And, oh yes, sorry, and my opposite, and I couldn't forget, my Labour lead is Councillor Morse and Councillor Borough. Lovely, sorry. I do, forgive me. It's all new for us. We have been in the chamber, like, usually I have you in front of me. It's just sort of like... You can't see us. I can't see us over there, but there you go. Anyway, so we go to the first item, which is, I'm going to take item 11 first, as we have a crowd of people here. So, is it Mr. Webber? Yeah, Mr. Webber, if you'd like to come to the table. Oh, sorry, first we'll present and then come to the table when we're ready. Okay?
For two-story detached houses at the end of Portman Gardens. So members will recall that this application was, just move on to the first slide. This application was deferred at last month's planning committee for a member site visit. So this was carried out on the 26th of November. And page 92 of the committee report provides clarifications that were sought at the site visit. These concerned the ownership of the planting bed and tree removal. The proposal and recommendation for approval remain unchanged from last month's committee, with the exception of amended condition 3. So at this point, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum. To further safeguard trees on neighbouring properties, specifically number 47, Sweetcroft, Condition 3 has been amended to require a revised tree report and protection measures to include the trees at number 47 Sweetcroft Lane. In all other respects, the recommendation remains the same. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the fact that a petition with 26 signatures has been received since the publication of the committee report. So if we just recap through some slides. So this is the site here. So you can see the entrance is at the top here to Sweetcroft Lane, and the houses, one house is proposed here and the other dwelling is proposed here with an extension of Portman Gardens here. So we flick through, there's just some aerial images of the site. Up closer, it's the site here. Okay, so in the site plan you can see the existing house that's on there, and this one here is the proposed. So you can, if you recall from last committee, you can see how the houses are generally in line with the other ones on Portman Gardens. So this site has previous refusals, which if you recall, we went through last time, and it's considered that the reasons for refusal have been addressed with this application. So if we can see here, at one point, 2 houses were proposed on one side, and then 4 houses. So what they've done is they've reduced the numbers of dwellings and placed them on opposite sides of Portman Gardens, that they pretty much resemble the other houses on Portman Gardens. So we flick through here. This is the proposed front elevation for house A, but house B is a mirror image, so it'll be the same on the other side. And this is what the rear elevation looks like. This is the house here. This is just a section showing house A on, if you're looking down Portman Gardens from the site, house A and house B. Some elevation plans again, but up close. They're the same for house A and house B, and some floor plans. So officers have assessed the proposal and considered the appeal history, and consider that this application overcomes the previous reasons for refusal. The revised design represents a continuation of the established pattern of development and would be in keeping with the houses on Portman Gardens in terms of scale, layout and design, and would integrate well with the street scene and the wider ASLC. There would also be sufficient parking on site with no harm to neighbouring amenity. Therefore, officers recommend that the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Webber, would you like to come to the table, please? As soon as you get comfortable and press the microphone, then your time will start, okay?
Just before I start, just the process, the information I gave wasn't additional. Beg your pardon, sorry. It wasn't additional information, it was just a copy of my slides. The last time I thought we were slightly disadvantaged because our slides weren't actually displayed on the screen, even though I provided them in advance So I felt to aid the committee, I would print them out and give them to to refer to while I was speaking.
Yeah.
So the fact you declined that is slightly disappointing, to be honest.
I'm sorry that you feel that way, but unfortunately I have to follow procedures. I can let legal tell you what the procedures are. And
The concern is that with the additional this information, I appreciate you're saying it's the slides. The slides will be displayed on the screens, but with additional information, if this is additional information, the other side or those with interest hasn't had the opportunity to peruse it and see it and respond, because they might have something to say as well, and then it causes prejudice and then it causes problem with the decision. So how the council operates is that it's got a window of time to submit any documents that can be shared around, so the members have ample opportunity to revise it. The other side has sufficient time to peruse it and critique it and maybe agree things, and that's not happened. So what if you're saying it's symmetrical to what's going to be presented, then there's no harm to your submission. Thank you.
In all fairness, last time I provided slides very clearly to Democratic Services, they weren't displayed and they weren't presented. So I was disadvantaged, and I feel that wasn't really very fair.
The complaint here is that they've not been provided in the window of time. It's 24 hours, and that's to avoid. The reason why it's set that time is that members, decision makers, have to have ample time to read it. The other side has to have good time to digest it as well. So it's unfortunate, but that it can't be relied. It's quite worded as well, so it's not able. The discretion is with the chairman, but it's not something that it's not fair to. I mean, if the other side was to provide documents like within the 24 hours, last moment, hours before the committee, I think you would maybe have a complaint.
Okay, understood.
It's fine. I mean, to be honest, it's not. If this was the first time that it's come before us, I mean, to be fair, a lot of members around the table have seen this application when it was 4 houses and 2 houses, now down to 2 houses. So I feel quite confident that the committee can make a decision on the information that they give in front of me. And I'd like to, I think I have to take legal advice, and I think that's only fair. So, okay, so whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry, apologies. Just wanted to clarify that point of process.
Not at all. That's what here. We're open for transparency. You go ahead. It's not a problem.
Thank you. Okay, so my first point relates to a further reduction in the PTAL rating of the site if they grant access via Sweetcroft Lane. So this property, 51 Sweetcroft Lane, is one of 6 properties that are currently perfectly adequately serviced by long access driveways. So on page 16, in paragraph 2 of the planning report, the highway engineer, internal Consultation, says, due to the relatively isolated nature of this location from public transport facilities, the site exhibits a very poor PTAL rating of 1B, and therefore raises dependency on the ownership and use of private motor transport. So under the current political climate, with justified focus on the environment and sustainability, if you grant access via Portman Gardens, it would mean even greater reliance on motor vehicles, because the residents in the future, 51 Sweetcroft Lane, will have to walk even further to get to the main roads for public transport. So it erodes the PTAL rating of the current site. So the second point is one of the council's officers, the Urban Design and Conservation Officer, had put a comment in the report on internal consultees. The proposed demolition of the existing property and subdivision of the site for 2 dwellings would continue the erosion of the ASLC's original planned layout. The intensification of the site would be an extension of Portman Gardens, establishing the unwelcome precedent of other sites being developed in the same manner. That's my second point. So the third point relates to the strip of land between the end of Portman Gardens and 51 Sweetcroft Lane. So this was specifically referenced, and I have put the photographs in the pack that you can't circulate, but it was referenced in the latest council report. I've actually been in touch with Berkeley Homes. They're the original developer of Portman Gardens. They confirm the land belongs to them and they own it. So on page 2 of the planning report, the latest post-site visit comments state the council considers land to be adopted highway. So in this consideration, was the correct due process followed by the council to change the status of the strip of land to adopted highway, and can this be proved? Even if the council grant access through this land, are they authorised to remove the tree in the centre that belongs to Berkeley Homes? adopted highway status does not grant the right to excavate on land owned by someone else. So to support this, I reference a case from the Supreme Court, London Borough of Southwark versus Transport for London, 2018. So the last 20 years I've been at 21 Portman Gardens. The council have never maintained this strip of land at all. I even called the council a couple of years after I moved in to ask for it to be cleared because it was a mess, and nobody came. So since that time, we have been caring and tending that piece of land for 20 years. So this land is therefore considered as non-maintained highway. So the council only has rights over the surface of a strip of land to grant access. The subsoil owner is Berkeley Homes, and they retain the rights to excavation and all other normal rights of ownership, e.g. the right to veto tree removal from the centre. So if access is granted by the council over this section of land and the tree stays, it's a moot point because you cannot have sufficient access to the site with that tree in situ. Okay? One of the final point on parking and vehicle movement, in the report here on page 17, paragraph 2, the highway engineer refers to peak period traffic movement into and out of the site would not be expected to exceed 2 to 3 additional vehicles at peak morning and evening times. The residents disagree with this, which I understand is an opinion, but there would be regular daily access required for heavy vehicles, site machinery, equipment for 2 years, which is the proposed plan by the developer. Some residents have also pointed out there are restrictive covenants in place on Portman Gardens in the house deed documentation that limit the parking of vehicles on the Portman Gardens roadway. Would the council guarantee similar restrictions if access was granted via Portman Gardens? So in summary, 5 petitions raised for all previous applications of this development proposed. Clearly the residents do not want access via Portman Gardens. There are legal issues with allowing access via the end of Portman Gardens. Adequate existing access to the property via Sweetcroft Lane is in place. The site is accessible. Environmental impacts of accessing via Portman Gardens by reduced PTAL rating, and a welcome precedent being set for further developments, versus a commercial developer whose sole motivation is profit and a desire to extend Portman Gardens for further eroding the ASLC. So my request is please place the views of the residents ahead of any commercial enterprises. Putting our residents first is a tagline on your headed paper for Hillingdon Council. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Thank you. Just before you leave, I just want to make sure, does any councillors have any questions for the petition? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Brewer. Do we have the applicant, Mr. Pullman? Yes, would you like to come to the table? And Mr. Pullman, as I stated before, traffic light system, as soon as you press the red button, off you go. Thank you.
We're the architects for the proposal and represent the applicant. Planning permission is sought to provide 2 detached family dwellings to replace the existing dilapidated dwelling. The National Planning Policy Framework has a requirement to encourage the effective use of land and encourages the use of previously developed land, vacant, underutilised sites to maximise development potential, in particular new housing. At local level, the local plan gives support to housing provision to meet and exceed the council's minimum requirements in accordance with the other local policies. Whilst we are not involved with the previous applications, we have sought to carefully address all the concerns raised by the local authority and planning inspector in terms of the quantum of development, the design, layout, siting and impact the homes would have on the character and appearance of the ASLC. Whilst we have worked closely with the planning and heritage officers to seek an architectural proposal that continues the established development pattern, character and scale of properties along Portman Gardens. Following the original submission, amendments to the roof form, windows and removal of balconies have been made. The existing narrow and long access from Sweetcroft Lane would be closed and new access provided by extending the existing highway at Portman Gardens. The highway engineer has confirmed the principle of the new access. Car parking, layout, cycle parking and servicing are all acceptable and they do not raise any safety concerns. The 2 on-plot car parking spaces proposed reflect the existing pattern of the other dwellings along Portman Gardens. The proposed much-needed family houses are sympathetic to the prevailing character of the area and established pattern of development. The density of the proposal was less than the optimal density within the guidance stated, but respects the historic character and appearance of the ASLC. The internal layouts comply and exceed the floor areas standards set out in the local policies and provide dual aspect living with generous and spacious gardens in excess of 300 square metres. There would also be a landscape buffer around the side elevations to create a pleasant separation distance between the new and existing dwellings. The planning officer's report confirmed the development would not result in any concerns relating to loss of privacy, daylight or sunlight to any of the neighbouring properties. I think it's important to note that Portman Gardens was created by replacing a number of houses which also had access from Sweetcroft Lane, like the site we are discussing tonight. It was only the owner at the time that did not want to be part of the development that exists today. The planning officer's report also states the proposal would not result in unacceptable harm to the ASLSE, the street scene, neighbouring amenity or highway network, and would comply with relevant local policies. We therefore ask you to support the local authority recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foreman. Any questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Tuckworth.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I'm sure officers will pick this up when we come to hear from officers a bit later on, but the petitioner made reference to the adopted or non-maintained highway. I just wonder what your view on that particular aspect was.
Yeah, I've been speaking to the applicant and he's done all his legal checks, and he's got his solicitors that have checked that it is actually adopted land between the site and Portman Gardens.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Yarrow. If you don't know the rules by now, then we have real problems. But you only have 3 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak yet again. This is a very emotive application and certainly affects the lives of the residents of Portman Gardens. As you can see, there are 14 very concerned residents here tonight in the audience. Now, you've heard most of this before, and I'm sorry to say you're going to hear it all again. Portman Gardens is a quiet cul-de-sac, and cul-de-sac is the operative word. It is not a through street. It doesn't join into any other area. This application has been in front of this committee 3 times before, rejected twice, and referred at the last meeting for a site visit. I fully support these residents, the residents who signed this petition, and the comments outlined by the petitioner, and other good analysis of the real facts. The size of the properties have been reduced, and you have had a site meeting, and once again it is up for approval. I have to say I am disappointed that not all members of this committee managed to get to the site visit, which rather dilutes the usefulness of the site visit. However, there are 3 clear statements that can be made. 1, Hillingdon Council oppose garden grabs. Why, therefore, are we now about to approve of one? 2, we all know it will not end here, and more houses will take the opportunity, more householders will take the opportunity to build similar structures or worse, once Portman Gardens becomes a through road, and the precedent has been set. 3, Hillingdon's motto, quite right, putting Hillingdon residents first. So I have to ask myself, is that what we're attempting to do here, or are we actually going to do it? If you believe in these statements, there's only one decision that you can make. This application has to be rejected on the grounds of using Portman Gardens as the entry point. Building the houses is not an issue. It's not a problem, and I want everybody to understand that. It is the entrance of using Portman Gardens as that entrance which has to be stopped. There are issues, and I certainly would like to hear the legal answers to the questions of the adopted highway. Yes, it can be an adopted highway, but that's the top surface. Underneath, I personally do not believe that Berkeley Homes have been even made aware that this is about to happen. So that is an issue which has to be attended to It might not stop the planning application, but it would certainly stop the road going through. Who owns the tree that's about to be cut down? That's another issue that I would like to see resolved. Thank you, Chairman. Here endeth my lesson.
Well done, Councillor Yarrow. Does any councillors have any questions for Councillor Yarrow? No? Thank you very much. Well said. Thank you. Can you turn the microphone off, David, please?
Oh.
Thank you.
Always forget that.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Before I open it to committee, I just want to make sure, officers, there were some questions from the petitioner, from the applicant, and obviously from the councillor. If they would like to come back on any of those, that would be helpful. Yeah, you may use my microphone, please, be my guest.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I thought it might be helpful if I came back on some of the points that were raised. So, first of all, it was raised regarding the use of the extension of Portman Gardens effectively sort of being a less sustainable method of sort of reaching the site in terms of PTAL and reliance on motor vehicles. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to policy DMH6 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2. So I did refer to this at the previous committee. This is a policy which is directly applicable to backland development or garden development. And it specifically states that access roads between dwellings and unnecessarily long access roads will not normally be acceptable. So whilst I appreciate what the petitioner has said, and that is a consideration, what the development plan policy is putting forward is that actually the Portman Gardens access is more appropriate, and I honestly feel that there are no sustainable grounds to refuse on the basis of extending that Portman Gardens road. So that's the first point. Secondly, it was raised regarding the impact on the area of special local character, and I don't want to go into this in too great a detail because I think it's covered in detail in the report. Essentially, it's going to be a matter for members to reach their own view on the harm or the level of harm. And I think it was useful that we had the site visit so members have been able to appreciate and sort of experience that for themselves. So obviously that's for yourselves to consider. I mean, my own view on it, as we've put forward in the report, is that with regard to the previous appeal decisions, it's our view, it's officers' view, that the previous reasons for refusal have been overcome in the revised arrangement and the sort of spacing of the properties, which would be an extension of the development adjacent. Moving on to the next point, the issue of land ownership. I think the key thing for me to stress here is that land ownership isn't a material planning consideration, so whoever owns that piece of land, it could potentially stop a development going forward if they don't want to sell that piece of land, but it isn't a reason to refuse planning permission. And then finally, it was raised regarding impact of construction traffic, and I just wanted to point members to condition, I think it's number 10, which is for a construction management plan. So what we'd be doing as part of that is to request details where we'd look to ensure that there was the impacts on neighbouring residents were minimised in terms of parking and disruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ros. I don't have a tendency to throw my councillors under the bus on site visit. I did have 2 apologies for absence, which I accepted on due course, so I'll put that on the record. That was from Councillor Morse and Councillor Wallana. Okay? So that was fine. They're both as having your booster jab, I think, was very important. So that's really unavoidable. That's booked, and Mr. Wallana, Councillor Wallana wasn't very well. So we're glad to see he's back with us. Okay, so I'm going to open it to the floor. Who wants to take me away first? Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site visit was useful, and I have been involved, not in this application, but I've been involved in previous applications that were subsequently refused. I mean, I could totally get where the residents of Portman Gardens are coming from, and I also see the dilemma that we're facing in terms of being policy compliant, because it ticks every policy box. But I have got a question to ask, and a couple of questions. One is, what's happening to the access road which comes in from Sweetcroft? What's going to happen to that if this development goes ahead? And a couple of points have been raised by Councillor Yarrow and by the petitioners around safeguarding, the extension of Portman Gardens in the future. Now, I know what the answer is going to be, but I think, is there anything that can be done to safeguard Portman Gardens from being extended any further should this application go ahead?
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Which one of you fine ladies is going to take it? Casey or Ross?
I can, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Councillor. In terms of the crossover on the existing access on the top of Sweetcroft Lane, that will be boarded up and the redundant crossover basically reinstated as footway. So that will no longer be an access. It will be simply through Portman Gardens. In terms of how we're going to be preventing any future development going as further extensions of Portman Gardens, so I guess first of all, every application is considered on its own merits, but also that there is a blanket TPO across pretty much the entirety of this area. And there, if we go to the aerial imagery, if we go back a bit, you can see that there are quite a significant number of trees that will prevent, TPO trees that would prevent or at least make it a bit more challenging to further develop the land along there. Thank you.
As I'll come back to you, Councillor Tugwell, but as you're aware, we have to deal with the applications in front of us, and as the chairman of the other committee, I would hope you'd understand that one. But yes, have you any further questions, Councillor Tugwell?
Yeah, thank you for the explanation on that, and you're quite right, Chairman, we have to consider what's in front of us, but I was just listening to the points and wanted to address those concerns. The point about the access road being boarded up, I mean, whose responsibility is to maintain it if it suddenly gets overgrown and attracts all kinds of other issues?
Yeah, Ros will come back on you on that one for you. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have proposed a condition to agree a landscaping scheme, so that would extend to that sort of access strip as well. So what we'd be looking for when we consider the details is the treatment of that, whether we thought that was appropriate. And also this condition includes they need to provide a maintenance schedule for a minimum period of 5 years, so that would enable any planting to establish. And there's provision as well for agreeing how we deal with need for replacement planting.
And also you've got item 10 also takes away their PD rights to build any sheds down there or anything like that, or make it use it as a garage, so that's in the report. Anything else, Councillor Tuckwell?
No, I'll let other councillors
Fine, thank you very much.
Questions.
Councillor Olana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would there be any loss of trees under any circumstances if the proposal go ahead?
Just double check, but I think it's no.
I just find it actual comment. Yeah, it might be helpful if I just read out the tree officer's comments. Okay.
It's on page 107.
Yeah, if you want to follow. So submission follows 2 previous applications, both of which were refused. The submission is supported by a full tree report, including survey, arboricultural impact assessment and method statement by Elizabeth Greenwood, dated March 2021, updated from the June 2018 version. The original survey identified and assessed 25 individual trees in 3 groups on or close to the site. There were no A-grade trees. 12 individual trees in 1 group have been graded B. The remaining trees are C-grade, with 4 of them classified as U. Since 2018, 4 B-grade trees have been removed, T1, T6, T7 and T11. Other lower quality trees, C or U grade, which have been removed include T3, T17, T18 and T19. A number of the trees are protected by TPO 32A, T3 crack and T19 walnuts, category U, which have now been removed, and T23, T24 and T25 oaks, or category B2. So essentially, which is why I wanted to refer to it, a number of trees have already been removed. The report recommends removing deadwood from the off-site oaks in the interest of safety and sound management. And the tree officer says there's no objection to this proposal, and this essential maintenance is exempt from requiring a tree work application. The report provides full details of recommended tree surgery and removal, and the method statement specifies the tree protection and other measures required to safeguard the trees to be retained. At 5.3.5, the report specifies that the site foreman will be responsible for supervising the tree protection measures, and the tree officer has no objection to the conclusions and recommendations contained in the tree report. And he did recommend a number of conditions, and sort of on reflection we have amended condition 3 via the addendum just to sort of strengthen it and safeguard the off-site trees.
Councillor Brotman.
Sorry, at the risk of repeating what's already been said, can I just clarify that even if we go ahead and we approve this, that's no guarantee that the properties will actually be built until the developer has acquired that strip of land, which isn't part of what's in front of us today?
That's correct. Any other questions? Councillor Walsh? No? Nothing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't attend the site visit.
No, you don't have to explain yourself. I've already covered that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'll explain that because...
Okay. No, that's fine.
Having gone through this report, the key turning point to some degree is the inspector's decision. The intensification of the existing residential site was considered to be acceptable. That is, without that statement from the inspectors, this would not be possible. I then go on to another aspect of the report. It makes it quite clear that the overall proposed development represents a continuation of the established development. I mean, the land space with two properties. The previous two developments were unacceptable because it was over-intensification of the site. Yeah, I mean, I generally accept that. And we're now in a position where the officers are of the view that the design of the properties conform to the design in the local area and maintain the ASLC properties. Therefore, I can find no planning reasons to refuse this application. I looked at this very carefully, and obviously when Councillor Allen made his points at the previous meeting, I just support we have a look. But I'm afraid that's my conclusions, Mr. Chairman.
Well said, Councillor Morse. Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, again, I'm going to come in here and just sort of summarise where I am on this. It's policy compliant, as Councillor Morse has said. We have refused previous applications with access roads in other parts of, not too far from here actually. We have refused applications. It is heavily conditioned, and we've seen a strengthening of conditions for round trees, condition 3. And I was pleased to hear that whilst not impossible, it's unlikely that Portman Gardens will be extended further because of the presence of a number of TPOs. Not impossible, but they would have to go through a number of hurdles, including coming to this committee to get those trees removed if they so wished. It's a difficult one, but I think we're policy compliant every step of the way. I know the conservation officer has said it's an unwelcome precedent, but we've heard some mitigation for that. But they've also said that they would recommend if conditions could be applied. So I think on that basis, I don't think we've got any planning reasons to refuse this, and I think we'd have to go with officer's recommendation. I'll be happy to move that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tuckwell. So I would propose by Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Von Arne, you indicated?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to second.
Okay, fine. That's been seconded, and we do understand residents' concerns, and but we are, to some extent, we are legally tied and bound by what we have in front of us. So, with a heavy heart, I'll have to ask all those in favour with officer's recommendations, please indicate. That's unanimous, Anisha. Thank you very much. We'll wait till you leave before we move on. We'll go back to the agenda to item 8. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, we're now going back to the normal agenda, which is item 8. Kate, can you is it? Oh, Nanisha, welcome, and off you go.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8. This application is for flatted development at 169 Joel Street. This scheme would involve the demolition of the existing dwelling at the site and erection of a Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 storey building comprising 8 flats with 4 car parking spaces. Here is a site location plan, bird's eye view for context, constraints plan, block plan, existing elevations of the property at the site at the moment, the floor plans of the existing property that's going to be demolished, some photos, so that's the front elevation of the property, the rear, and a street scene photo. That's views looking north of the site, looking south. In terms of resident consultation, the council has received 23 objections from residents, an objection from Ruislip, Northwood and Eastcote Local History Society, and a petition against the application with 63 signatories. These objections primarily concern the impact on neighbouring residential amenity, harm to the character and appearance of the area, and lack of on-site car parking spaces. These representations have been acknowledged in Section 6 of the committee report and addressed within its main body. The application is recommended for refusal due to its size, scale, massing and design, and the adverse impact it would have to the character, appearance and visual amenities of the area. I am going to show you the scheme and I wanted to talk about that in a bit more detail, so just bear with me. Members will note from the site history that this is a resubmission of the application which was considered by the North Planning Committee in March 2021. This is pending an appeal against, there is a pending appeal against the refusal of this previous application. In summary, the grounds for refusal of this previous application were 1. Harm to the character and appearance of the area, 2. Substandard accommodation for future occupants due to bedroom windows being obscure glazed, 3. Inadequate external amenity space provision for future occupants, 4. Loss of privacy due to several habitable room windows facing the side elevation of neighbouring properties, 5. The failure to provide adequate provision to meet the needs of people with disabilities due to the absence of any lift provision, and 6. Insufficient off-street car parking provision. The application before me and with us this evening has sought to address the latter 5 of these reasons for refusal. Okay. So the image on the screen has the floor plans of the previously refused scheme and the floor plans for the scheme currently being considered. As you can see, all the bedroom windows are now fitted in the front or rear elevations of the proposed building, thereby providing future occupiers with a reasonable level of natural light and outlook. So this is the proposed ground floor plan, and that's the first floor plan, and that's the second floor plan. The windows fitted in the side elevations of the proposed building would serve bathrooms. So if we go back to look at the ground floor plan, I'll just point. So there, if you try to get the red, it's hard. There you go. So the windows in the side elevation are now only going to be serving bathrooms, whereas previously they were serving bedrooms. And then if we go to the first floor plan, it's the same. There's bathroom windows on the side elevations. So these bathroom windows would have been conditioned to be obscure glazed and non-opening up to 1.8 metres of the finished floor level had this application be recommended for approval by officers. Officers therefore consider that this revised layout has addressed the grounds for refusal numbers 2 and 4. I'm just going to take you back to the ground floor plan. I think the plot plan would be better actually. To comply with policy requirements, the proposed development would need to provide 180 square metres of private external amenity space in total. The proposed development would provide 584 square metres of external amenity space in the form of dedicated rear gardens, rear terraces and a communal amenity space to the rear of the building. Officers consider that the proposed development would provide sufficient quantity and quality of external amenity space. Ground for refusal number 3 has therefore been addressed. Okay. So since the previous refusal, a viability assessment has been submitted to demonstrate that the lift would make the development unviable, and that the service charges to maintain a lift would be unaffordable for the attended residents. Officers have carefully considered the submitted evidence and are of the view that exceptional circumstances exist to warrant flexibility in applying the accessible housing standards M42 and M43. And this is in line with the London Plan. So just to make it clear to members, the London Plan does allow local authorities to use some flexibility as long as it complies with the exceptions, and officers are of the view that this would fall within one of those exceptions. So, in respect to how this revised scheme has addressed the parking and highway safety concerns raised in reason for refusal number 6, I will defer to my highway colleague, Alan Tilley.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Nisha. This application is for 8 units. The previous application that committee saw was for 9 units. The type of units that they are has also shifted. 5 of the units will be 1 bedroom, whereas previously 3 out of the 9 units would be 1 bedroom. So this development would have far more 1 bedroom units, which would not be occupied by families. Therefore, dependency on the private car for trip making would be lower. This application has already been to an appeal where the inspector noted that there was car parking availability on Middleton Drive, and there were no issues with cars parking on Joel Street. The applicant has also submitted the results of a parking survey which show that there is 58% capacity on street. In addition to that is the context of the site. Whilst it has got a low P-TAL, it is in close proximity to bus stops, just 57 metres away from the northbound stop, which will take you to Northwood Hills. And then when you get to Northwood Hills, you've obviously got access to the Metropolitan line, and the bus stop just to the north, that's served by the 282, which travels between Ealing Hospital and Mount Vernon Hospital, calling it Eastcote, Northolt, Northwood Hills and Northwood underground stations. So the Highway Authority consider giving account of the mix of the unit types, the number of car parking spaces provided, and the opportunities for trip making by means other than the private car. There are no highway objections, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify one of the points raised by Alan, just for clarification. The appeal decision noted within the committee report is in relation to 190 Joel Street, not this site. So there is a pending appeal at this site, but an appeal decision notice has not been issued by the Secretary of State. So just wanted to clear that up. Thank you. It's okay. Right, so we come to the elevations of the proposed building. So here is a front elevation of the proposed building. Officers have concerns about the uncharacteristic crown roof profile and the glazing within the roof face. You will be able to see the glazing a lot clearer on the CGI. So just taking you to the rear elevation. So you have the box-style dormers, the projecting rear balconies, a crown roof on the part 2-storey element, and then on the side elevations, so you can see the bulk and massing of the scheme. It should be noted that the depth of this revised scheme has been reduced. However, officers are of the view that this is not sufficient to overcome the previous grounds refusal in terms of the impact, the detrimental impact it would have on the character and appearance of the area. So just to conclude, whilst officers consider that the changes have addressed the previous concerns in respect to residential amenity, accessible housing and parking, there are still significant concerns about the size, design, scale and massing of the development and its detrimental impact to the character and appearance of the area. Planning officers therefore recommend that the application be refused for this reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Well done. We've got an objection from Susan Fortella, which is a written submission, which Anisha, you will read out, but I will time. Due to fairness, I think, if whether you're here or you're not, you still only get your 5 minutes. So if you don't read fast enough, I'll have to call you up and then you stop. Okay? So, off you go.
I am writing to oppose the construction of the proposed building on 169 Joel Street, reference number 22642/2021/1965. 169 Joel Street started out as a two-bedroom detached house when it was originally built and has subsequently had two substantial planning requests over the years. Firstly, it was made into a four-bedroom additional reception room family home on the arrival of children by the previous owners. Then Mr. and Mrs. Rastogi purchased the house and eventually had it made into a six-bedroom and further reception rooms home, which was not objected to by the local residents, therefore exhausting the boundaries of the property to any further need of expansion. While we appreciate the amendments Mr. and Mrs. Rastogi have made, we feel the largest concern from his previous application has not been addressed. My concerns about the lack of parking and increased congestion still stand. Mr. and Mrs. Rastogi plan to erect the properties with 12 bedrooms. This could mean a maximum of 24 people could be living there. This is based on the assumption that each bedroom could occupy 2 people. Yet the proposers have kept the 4 parking spaces outlined in their previous proposal. Even if fewer occupants were to live there, Mr. and Mrs. Rastogi have only created half as many spaces as the amount of flats they plan to build. We're glad the proposal highlighted the flats at 192 Joel Street. Upon inspection, there are 18 flats with 8 garages and an impressive 20 car parking spaces. Speaking to a resident at 192, they say that each flat has their own parking space and they have the capacity for 10 visitor spaces. Thus, the need to park on Joel Street is mitigated. As mentioned in my last opposition comment, the congestion on Joel Street is getting worse and the removal of one dwelling simply won't alleviate this. I've spoken to local residents who feel the same way. We are increasingly frustrated by the increase in traffic and lack of available parking. 63 people share my concerns and do not feel the change proposals is sufficient. We still suffer with the gym class users in the nursery, at the farm parking all over Joel Street and down both Middleton Drive and Wavell Close several times a week during the day and in the evenings. Grant and Stone park 3 of their lorries on Joel Street, and commuters of Northwood Hill Station are now parking further down due to the restricted hours of parking in the roads near to the station, for example Norwich Road. Traffic already tails back and down both sides of Joel Street for at least 3 hours a day. More residents would undoubtedly contribute to this. Traffic can be at a standstill at rush hour. Residents from Middleton Drive and Wavell Close say their roads are at full capacity. They struggle to park and access their drives. Emerging from Middleton Drive is becoming more dangerous due to the lack of visibility caused by vehicles parked on Joel Street. The bus stop opposite Middleton Drive adds to the chaos. We feel that the quantity of people who could be living at the flats puts a strain on local amenities. There are already a large number of people living locally. The shared amenity at the back of the property will cause nuisance and an increase in disturbance as this backs onto several local residents' gardens. The proposal is not in keeping with this side of Joel Street. As stated before, this plot is more suited for 2 semi-detached properties. Myself and the local residents feel dissatisfied by the changes made. The impact of the 8 flats makes us feel very unsettled. Parking is a pertinent and very stressful issue already. Myself and other residents cannot bear the thought of this becoming a larger issue. It makes a lot of residents feel that they want to move house. Thank you for your consideration and taking the time to listen to my concerns.
Well done, Anisha. 340. Not bad at all. Do we have the applicant here or the agent? No. Have we had any written response from them? I've had an email from Councillor Bianco and Councillor Flynn agreeing with officers' recommendations on this. I will now open it to the floor. Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman. Given the robustness of the report, it really is an extremely good report, and I see no reason to not go along with officers' recommendations. Therefore, I propose that we go with officers' recommendations.
Councillor Kaufman. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Chairman.
Just think out of the corner of my eye.
My question is, we've not seen, could we have refused this relatively small development, policy H10, because I see everywhere one-bedroom dwellings, particularly in commercial premises that are being converted. We seem to have a big run of them in the borough. And this particular site, it only allowed 1 3-bedroom. And this is a point the Secretary of State made about homes for families.
I don't think there's a question there.
I'm sorry, could we use... Sorry, I asked, could we use policy H10 on a relatively small development?
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, my own view is that, I take your point, it is skewed towards the smaller properties, but I feel it would be a difficult one to defend, really, because there is a sort of mix in there, and we have got the family dwelling as a replacement, but that's my view on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There you go. I have Councillor Brightman, and then I have Councillor Birra, and then Councillor Tuckwell. So, Councillor Brightman, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say that I agree with Councillor Kaufman, and I'm happy to second the refusal going with officers' recommendations.
Councillor Birra.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Brightman got in before I did, actually. So I go with the officer's recommendation, and I think it's a very comprehensive report.
Yes, Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm on the same page as what's been said. But what I was going to try and explore out of officers is it just feels a bit light on refusals for me. I mean, I know we've talked about the lift and that was covered off. The parking shortfall, and I note the previous appeals comments all about there's plenty of parking on Joel Street, but it is actually against our policy and London plan policy. It's below. So is it worth testing that, because this is the thin end of the wedge when it comes to parking. And the other point was around private amenity space. I mean, if I'm reading the report correctly, there's 8 dwellings, 3 of them are okay and 5 of them are underprovided for on private amenity space. Is that something we could pin a refusal on, in your view, or have we got enough to deal with this application?
Okay, I'll go to Alan Tilley to the parking thing, and then I'll go over to Ros to pick up the...
Thank you, Chairman. For car parking standards, we refer to the published London plan. The London plan would allow a maximum of 6 car parking spaces at this development. So 4 are being provided, taking into account my comments earlier that you've got a bus stop nearby which takes you to the tube station and then various other destinations served by the Metropolitan line, and also that 5 of the 8 units are going to be 1 bedroom. We feel that the 4 provided is policy compliant. 6 is the maximum that the London plan would allow us to provide. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Ros, do you want the other point?
Yeah. If you just would mind 1 moment, I just want to check the previous application report.
Sorry, whilst Wath is looking, could I provide some assistance on some of the points you've raised? It's noted that there's only one key ground for refusal here, but however, This is a resubmission. The applicant has tried to address a number of the previous grounds for refusal, so I did spend some time at the beginning of this presentation explaining the previous reasons for refusal. There are 6 in total. Officers are of the view that the applicants have addressed 5 of those, which only leaves 1 left, and that's the impact on the character and appearance of the area. In terms of the external amenity space, yes, it's appreciated that not all of the majority of the external amenity space that's going to be provided is not private. However, an unbalanced assessment has to be applied here. We're refusing this application, or recommending this application for refusal, on the basis of balconies being out of keeping with the character of the area. So by asking them to provide additional private amenity space would effectively mean larger balconies. So we would be slightly contradicting ourselves there if we are stating that the communal amenity space is not sufficient. So that's the reason why we've taken that balanced view here. So we're saying in terms of the combination of the private garden spaces for the ground floor flats towards the rear, the balconies and the communal amenity space, and given that it's way above the policy requirements, officers are of the view, on balance, that the overall provision of external amenity space being provided is acceptable. So, thank you, Councillor.
Well answered, Nisha. Thank you very much. That's a thorough answer. The report is very thorough, I must admit, as well. I think that answers your question. It does, thoroughly. I am proposed and seconded, so I'm proposed by Councillor Kaufman and seconded by Councillor Brightman. Those in favour with the officer's recommendation, please indicate. That's unanimous. And yep, thank you very much. We move now to item 9, which is 47 Fairfield Road, Uxbridge.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application at 47 Fairfield Road in Uxbridge is to demolish the existing house on site and to construct a new residential building for 6 dwellings. So if we just have a look at the site here, you can see it's a corner plot. This is the existing house on the site. So this is the street view from Fairfield Road, and then because it's a corner, this is the house on the other side, and this is the rear elevation. So this site might be familiar to members as this is a resubmission of a scheme that was refused at Planning Committee in July last year. So it was refused due to its scale and the harm this would have on the character and visual amenities of the area. The previous application was subsequently appealed and dismissed, and with the planning inspector upholding the council's reason for refusal. So in terms of what the inspector's decision said, if you could please omit the statement on page 56, and in lieu have the statement I'm going to read now. So the inspector's decision noted that the building would appear unduly wide and deep compared to its neighbours. The side elevations, which extend upwards to the full height of the proposal, would be close to the boundaries, where the proposal would appear cramped and with little visual relief. Its elevated position at the corner, which we saw in the site image here, its elevated position at the corner would mean that the long and high side elevation would be particularly prominent and overbearing when seen outside the appeal site. And furthermore, it was noted that the long elevations and low sections of hipped roof would do little to disguise the large flat-roofed area, particularly in such a prominent location. So I've just got some comparative images here. So the appealed site and dismissed is the one on the left here, and the current one is the one on the right. So if we look at these slides, you can see that there's been some marginal reductions in depth, and also these elevations in height and roof form, but these aren't really considered substantive. Sorry, went too fast there. And are not considered to overcome the previous reason for refusal. So, and then if we just look quickly at the basement plan, because the basement wasn't in here previously, it's a new addition. Officers further consider that the outlook from these bedrooms would be poor. So in addition to the previous reason for refusal on character grounds, we've also included a recommendation for refusal based on poor quality living conditions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's very good. We have an objection to this, but they're not here, and they emailed. We did email them and asked them if they were going to come, but no one's attending. Is the applicant, Mr. Patel, here? No, he hasn't turned up either. Okay, and we have no councillors to talk, so we'll go straight to the floor. Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, another good report. You know, this is particularly prominent corner in an area of good character, local appearance. It's been subject to appeals and it's been in front of various committees in one form or another. I see no reason why we wouldn't want to go with officer's recommendation, and I'm happy to move.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I have a proposer, Councillor Brightman. Sorry, Councillor Morse was next. Sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the key issue here is the location and the prominence of this site, and I totally agree with the officer's report, so I will second Councillor Tuckwell's proposal.
Thank you.
We go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Warner and Councillor Brightman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It won't harmonise the local character of the area, so I'm happy to support the officer recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Brightman?
Councillor Moore, speak me to it.
Yeah, it's just who if it flickers, I'm having peripheral vision here. I'm going to ask Ross to come in as well just before I go straight to the vote, because of non-determination, so Ross will just do this from that.
Yeah, I just thought it might be helpful to clarify. So this application, an appeal has been lodged against non-determination. So it was just to clarify that the vote that you'd be taking would be in terms of the decision that you would have made if we were going to determine the application. And then I will be sending off the report and your resolution to the planning inspectorate as our statement of case.
Okay. There you go. So it proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands to go with officer's recommendation? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. We'll go to item 10. Councillor Borough, you're going to excuse yourself, so go and have a coffee or something.
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 10 is for 2 new dwellings to the rear of numbers 14 to 16 Hall Lane. So if we just go through the drawings, you can see this is the application site here in red. It's 2 semi-detached dwellings. You can see here with unusually long gardens for the area. So as we can see here on the aerial image of the surrounds, there is a mix of uses. So you've got commercial properties here and commercial on the high street here, and there is diversity in scale, form and appearance. However, as you can see from the residences here, here and up here, for the most part they're closely grouped terraced and semi-detached houses on moderately sized plots with soft landscaping or parking to their frontages. The exception to this would be Cheviot Court, which is this development here at the end of this cul-de-sac. So this adopts a characteristic court development with bungalows arranged around shared open green spaces, legible communal paths and courtyard parking. In general, the site is very open with legible street presence at the end of the cul-de-sac. So as a whole, irrespective of the varied forms, each home sits comfortably within their respective plots with respect to and have a clear and legible street presence. So if we just look at some site photos, this is the 14 and 16 Hall Lane. This is where the proposed car parking would be. This is just another bird's eye view of the site. Okay, so if we look at the proposed plans here, you can see these are the existing dwellings at the front. You've got 4 parking spaces here, and the 2 single-storey houses at the back are here. And you can see that the access to the site would be down this, it's pedestrian access only, down this long, narrow, enclosed accessway. This is just a close-up of the floor plans. One thing to note on here as part of one of the reasons for refusal is this window here, for bottom dwelling would also be looking into the garden space of the other dwelling, and also vice versa. And this here is the proposed elevation. So you can see that it's a flat-roofed building, which it is noted that there are outbuildings with flat roofs also, but this is a dwelling, so I guess the expectation would be that the form would be different. So in summary, the proposal would lack eligible street frontage, would only be accessible by a lengthy and enclosed pedestrian path. The proposed dwellings would have a contrived design, site layout and appearance with disproportionate site coverage, and overall these factors would result in a cramped form of backland development that's wholly incongruous with the prevailing pattern of development, to the detriment of the character and visual amenities of the site and wider area. And also there's the dwellings would be single aspect, and just their design and layout would provide substandard living conditions. So therefore it's recommended that planning permission be refused for the reasons outlined in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Is Mr. Brian Harris here? Would you like to come to the table, sir? I don't know if you were here earlier when I said you have a traffic light system. Green light gives you 4 minutes, amber will say you've got 1, and red, I will stop you. So, if you go ahead whenever you're ready.
With regards to the site, I live right alongside it. My back garden looks onto it as well. There's going to be a constant noise if it's allowed, or plant or whatever's got to go in there to do the job. And I don't see the point of it at all, except the wildlife at the bottom of that garden is quite good, and it won't be when that's built. They would just, all the wildlife will go completely, and the trees will go, whatever's there left. And the noise factor on the working, how the stuff's going to get into the lane to do the job, I don't know, basically, because there's 4 parking spaces on the left-hand side, and I've got a parking drive. That all the houses have got a parking drive, so it's going to be a nightmare, basically, as far as I see it. That's all I can say. Nothing else. But there's going to be skips come down there. There's going to be plant come down there. There's going to be disruption with offloading stuff from. It's a lane. It's not a road, and it's a dead end. So there's nowhere to park. So I don't know how it can be done, basically. Ambulance can't get down there. Fire engine won't be able to get down there. Because it's a walkway. So what else can I say about it?
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Did you have? No, nothing? Thank you very much. That's fine. Yeah, if you'd like to press the button to turn the microphone off for me. And then I'll just see if we have the applicant. If you'd like to take your seat back down there, thank you. The applicant is Mr. Patel. Sorry, Mr. Borough, sorry. Reading the one above, sorry, beg your pardon. And he's got photos submitted, isn't he? Yeah. Just to members to know that the photos that you have in front of you have been submitted. Okay? They were within the time schedule, so I'll make sure that is known as well. Okay, thank you. Off you go.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for your time. My agent is also present with me today. I'd like to begin by saying I would never seek to bring forward a planning application which was wholly unsuitable. I'm a street champion. I'm the neighbourhood watch coordinator for my area, and I'm assisting residents is quite routine. I take great interest in the local community, which has seen me spearhead a petition myself against KFC and Starbucks because of ongoing littering issues that the residents are facing. And 3 years later, I'm still fighting for residents to bring about change, as many of your colleagues will be able to testify. Interestingly, some residents on this petition have reached out to me subsequently and stated that they don't want to be on the petition and felt some type of pressure into signing. So as of today, the petition I feel is not up to date, and this can be demonstrated by a petition which I could submit, where you will subsequently find residents have signed both petitions, which is kind of strange. Nonetheless, it is what it is, and we are where we are. I realise the council has a presumption against backland development, and I respect the reasons for this stance. I get it, I do. But Hillingdon Council has given planning approval for backland development on a considerable number of occasions previously. In this regard, our research is still being conducted, but thus far it is quite revealing. As you can see from the drawings, 14 and 16 Hall Lane have excessively long gardens, unique when compared to the local area. Since ownership of the properties, I have found residents do not use or require the full extent of the gardens, leaving large parts to become overgrown and repositories for rubbish and unwanted items. We could transform this space into properties which the residents can benefit from. With due respect to the planning report, reading the reasons for refusal, one can only conclude the reasons given for refusal seem to be contrived, grasping at straws, as it were. Despite repeated requests, my agent hasn't been able to have a single conversation with the officer in the 5 months it has taken to reach this decision. I don't believe this is normal practice, and I don't believe it is a coincidence either. It feels like a deliberate act, giving us no chance to make any changes which may be required to gain approval. In short, if discussions were achieved, there would be next to no reason to cite to refuse this application. The strategy feels quite obvious, and to think I paid a considerable fee for this. Had I known that, I might have considered withdrawing the application. And covering the specific points, the proposed scheme overcomes the design issues raised at pre-application, which is 26 March 2021, which was based on a pair of semi-detached dwellings positioned centrally to the rear of the site. Proposed single-storey dwellings of a contemporary linear design are sited along the east boundary of the site, adjacent to the office building, providing a landscaped garden acting as a courtyard buffer between the single-storey bungalows at Cheviot Close and the new dwellings. The scheme is proposed based on the unusually large site area, complying with both space and amenity standards. The design, by virtue of its linear form, provides a single-aspect outlook to the landscaped courtyard garden, to the open-plan kitchen, living, dining and all bedrooms which are compliant with housing standards. The single-storey building of modest depth provides outlook to all habitable spaces with natural ventilation. Landscaped garden and 1.8 metre high boundary treatment provides adequate privacy. Proposed dwelling are compliant with housing standards. Proposal will be secured by design compliant. The proposed dwellings are sited adjacent to existing bungalows at Cheviot Close, which provide the necessary precedents for the proposal. The proposed dwellings are in keeping with the character of the adjacent bungalows at Cheviot Close, i.e. single-storey. The proposed scheme is sympathetically designed with the bungalows at Cheviot Close in mind, with no impact, reference loss of light or privacy. Proposed scheme comprises single-storey building of modest depth, which provides outlook to all habitable spaces with natural ventilation, outlook to landscaped courtyard garden of open plan kitchen, living and dining and all bedrooms. The transport statement by Paul Mew Associates, which accompanied both the pre-application and revised detailing planning application, clearly demonstrates compliance based on the Lambeth methodology. And I don't believe highways have raised any issues with this. So if you could consider this, I would be most grateful.
Right on time. Does anybody have any questions? No, thank you very much. You'd like to take a seat? Councillor Nelson, do you wish to speak? I don't see you here very often, Councillor, so I'll just warn you that you only have 3 minutes, because we know that you can speak. We've heard you often enough in the chamber, so that's why you only have 3, not 5. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just here to support the local residents. Obviously, the applicant has made his plan, he's laid out his plan quite clear. But I just wanted to say that the individuals with the objectors, the residents, who has been living there for quite a numerous of years, is aware of what's happening, and they're the ones who is going to be affected by this. Also, I want to raise that in that particular area, it's a conservation area where the proposed application is asking for, and I would hope that you take that into consideration as well. The 53 residents who supported the petition, I just heard that they're doing 2 petitions, so I'm not really clear on that, but it does speak for itself. If 53 residents sign a petition that they do object to the amount of building that is happening within the vicinity. The 2 dwellings, the land itself, I think where the proposal is very narrow to have. It's very small. They may have a long garden, but the siting of it is very small to put 2 dwellings on there, and also accessibility, because access is not there. Access is not there for if there's an emergency, for emergency vehicles, for ambulances, for fire engine, for the fire service, which was raised. So I think it's important that take into consideration. It really the proposed plan is not adequate enough for the development that they're proposing on it. And as I raised on the issues of accessibility, I think that's the biggest issue more than anything else. And the area that is going to be in is a cul-de-sac, so you can get in, you can get out. So where would ambulances, the narrow footpath to get down? So I do support our residents in regard to the objecting to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Is there any questions for Councillor Nelson? Yes, we have a question, Councillor Nelson. You have to stay. Sorry, Councillor. No, you don't have a question. Then why did you indicate? Okay. All right, fine. None. Thank you very much, Councillor Nelson. Okay. Fine. Okay. Right. There were some remarks made by there which I don't like and won't adhere, and we will just wash ourselves over them. I'm quite happy with the officers' report. I'm happy with the way that the officers have conducted themselves, and I won't have officers being criticised in this committee. If they have a problem, we have a complaints committee, and you can write to them and put your objections in there. Officers can't respond to those accusations, and will have that in my committee. So I'm going to open it to the floor now. Who wants to take me away? Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Morse. And Councillor Banana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where to start, really? Councillor Nelson's raised the point around access, which is what I wanted to explore in a little bit more detail. I mean, on page 78, it talks about access, and the access officer has raised concerns about dimensions, but the planning officer response says they've been submitted to address all of the access officer's concerns. However, it should be noted the lengthy access route would not provide safe, accessible and convenient approach to dwellings. Surely that's enough to add a condition, the refusal region on that. But I'd also be interested to know how long is that access road as well.
You're going to give me my 75 metres, are you? Does anyone want to pick up on that? Katie?
It does form part of the reason in terms of the layout of the site, the reason number 1, and then also reason number 2, when it talks about the living conditions, part of that, as well as the single aspect, the privacy issues, there's also the access issues incorporated into that. So the overly lengthy access is being incorporated into both. There is, let me just find the actual of figures of the length.
While Councillor Tucker wants to ask another question.
I know it's mentioned in those conditions, but I have seen refusal reasons which specifically refer to access to emergency vehicles. But if you're happy that that's covered off in that, that's fine.
In terms of emergency vehicles, Alan, would you be... There is, in terms of distance for fire engines, like they can, I think it's something like 45 metres in terms of the tender, so it is within that they can get that way. And in terms of ambulance access, I'm not sure if there is a specified distance, but you can get a gurney down the pedestrian. There isn't? Okay.
There wouldn't be, no, that's fine, we're happy. Any other questions, Councillor Thomas? No? Okay, fine. Councillor Morse.
Well, what I particularly notice about this is the distance on this footpath. One building is 45 metres and the other is 55 metres. If you look at the footprint of the building, it touches 3 of the 4 boundaries. And I will also make a point that Councillor Nelson's point, this is a conservation area, and the design, as clearly indicated in the report, says it doesn't match the area whatsoever. In a way, this is a contrived background development. We've got policies against garden development, so I'm going to propose officers' recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Still couldn't have said it better myself. Sometimes it's very difficult being in this chair because I'm not allowed to say things. Who's going to second it for me? Councillor Brightman. Oh, sorry, Councillor Walana, you wanted to speak. Sorry. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to lack of accessibility and unacceptable harm to the character and loss of light, obviously, these are the main reasons. So I'm happy to second.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just officers coming back, I just want to double check, is it a conservation area or not?
Thank you, Chairman. It's not showing on the system as a designated conservation area, but that doesn't mean, that we couldn't have concerns about the impact on the character and appearance of the area.
Okay. Councillor Brightman, do you have anything to say? Okay, fine. So I have a proposed and a seconder. I will go to councillors to vote. Councillor Kaufman, you left the room during it, so you won't be able to vote. So if we just show a show of hands, please, all in favour of the officer's recommendation. So that's been refused, and there's 1 absentee. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That has been refused. Yeah. Right, we go back to the agenda. We've done item 11 because we did that first. So we're on to item 12, which is 57 Newsgate Road, Fairfield, Middlesex. And Nisha, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a retrospective application at 57 Newsgate Road. I must warn members that this application is slightly more complex as there is a pending enforcement investigation, so I'll try to explain the background as much as possible so you can get a full understanding of this application. So the application site is located on the northwestern side of Newsgate Road and comprises a 2-storey mid-terraced property. As can be seen from the constraints plan, the site is located within the designated Fairfield Village Conservation Area. Here's a bird's eye view of the site. It should be noted that there is an outbuilding in the rear garden of the site. Although this is not shown on the submitted block plan, the outbuilding does not form part of this application, and officers consider that its physical structure is lawful. So let me just show you the outbuilding first. So this is the outbuilding that's there, but it's not shown on the block plan. So I'll just skip back to the block plan. Now, the larger red rectangle that you can see represents the rear dormer extension that the applicant has constructed, and the smaller rectangle that you see represents the single-storey rear infill extension that they've constructed. But I'm going to provide some further information about all the other developments that has been carried out at the site. So just bear with me one moment. The submitted planning application form states that planning consent is being sought for the retention of a dormer window and a single-storey rear extension which measures 4.9 metres deep. However, officers do not consider this description to be an accurate reflection of the development. Okay, so during the officer site visit, it was observed that a single-storey rear extension and rear dormer extension has been constructed, as you can see on the screens. However, the following development has also been carried out. Just give me a moment. Okay. So the ridge height of the property has been increased. A roof light has been installed in the front roof slope. A new external pipe one has been installed on the front property. It's a bit hard to see on this photo, but it is clear when you're standing in front of the property. So the external pipe is here, running along the boundary with number 55. And then if I skip back to the rear elevation, so the original two-storey rear outrigger, so here, has been externally rendered in white at ground floor level. These developments would be retained as part of the scheme being considered before us this evening. Officers are therefore of the view that these developments should be considered as part of the overall assessment of this application. So this photo here shows the proximity of the single-storey rear extension in relationship to the neighbouring property at number 59. And this photo was taken from the back of the site, where you can clearly see that the constructed rear dormer is visible from the public domain. So, in terms of the use of the property, the covering letter submitted with this application claims that the property is being converted into a small house in multiple occupation, HMO, and therefore does not require planning permission. However, based on the evidence possessed by the council, there are concerns that the development could potentially result in the creation of 6 self-contained flats, for which planning permission would be required. So, as you can see on the screen, the proposed plan shows that each bedroom would have a double bed and a ensuite. So this is the ground floor. There's 3 bedrooms on this level, and then the first floor there's 2 bedrooms. All of them have, as I said, have en-suites. And then you can see a communal kitchen on first floor level as well. And then you've got the 6th bedroom within the loft space. So during the officer site visit, it was observed that each bedroom would have its own exclusive, I'll just go to some photos to help you understand the internal layout. So each bedroom will have their own exclusive ensuite. So all of the ensuites look similar to this one. So I didn't put all the ensuites on the slides. All the bedrooms would have a washing machine, or actually have. So all rooms have a washing machine, kitchen sink, and a fridge. And this is just a photo of one of the first bedroom, which is bedroom 1, and that's to the front of the property on ground floor level. After the site visit, the council received an objection from a resident with a photograph showing that bedroom 1 contains a microwave or a microwave oven. It's a bit unclear based on the photograph that the resident has provided, because it was taken from outside of the property, but it is clear that there is some sort of microwave or microwave oven that was located on the kitchen counter. I haven't provided that photograph because you can see part of the view, the image of the resident, so it was best just to take the cautious approach and not include it. So based on the evidence that has been provided, officers are concerned that future occupants could potentially be afforded with all the necessary facilities required for day-to-day private domestic assistance, thereby resulting in a material change of use to 6 self-contained studio flats. The issue about the microwave or microwave oven is important because whilst there's a communal kitchen on first floor level, if there are cooking facilities within all of the bedrooms, future occupants may not necessarily need to rely on the communal kitchen, so they could effectively be self-contained residential units. So I just wanted to highlight that to members so they are aware of that. I'll go back to the floor plans. Give me a moment. So, in terms of resident consultation, the council has received 22 objections and an objection from the Fairfield Tenants and Residents Association. These objections primarily concern the harm caused to the conservation area, the poor standard of accommodation for future occupants, and street parking pressure. An e-petition against the application was received by the council. However, the petition is not counted as valid as it did not receive at least 20 signatories. But just to point out that 22 objections were received, which is why this case has been referred to Planning Committee. As detailed in Section 6 of the committee report, this application is recommended for refusal due to 8 reasons. In summary, these are: the proposal would result in a material change of use into 6 self-contained flats in a location and form that would be unacceptable due to the requirements of amenity space, parking, and the detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area and neighbouring residential properties. 2, the rear dorm extension, due to its excessive size, scale, siting and design, appears as an incongruous and visually obtrusive addition which significantly detracts from the original property and the setting of the conservation area. 3, the increased ridge height of the property by virtue of it being higher than the adjoining terraced properties causes harm to the character and appearance of the host property, the street scene and the surrounding conservation area. 4, the front roof light and external pipe run by virtue of their siting on the front elevation of the property, protrusion and design detracts from the architectural composition of the host property and causes harm to the street scene and the conservation area. 5, the unacceptable subdivision and loss of a family-sized dwelling. 6, the poor quality of living conditions for future occupants, both in terms of internal amenity space and outdoor amenity space. 7, the single-storey rear extension, due to its proximity, depth at 4.9 metres, height and roof profile, causes harm to the living conditions of the neighbouring residential occupiers at number 59. I could just skip back to the photo that I showed you earlier. So it's that neighbour that's rendered in grey that we're talking about. In terms of outlook, sense of enclosure and overbearing impact, and the last reason for refusal is 8, and that's due to insufficient parking provision, which would result in highway congestion to the detriment of public and highway safety. Officers therefore recommend that members refuse this application. Also, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum which clarifies the parking deficit on the site. There is a slight typo within the committee report which refers to the incorrect policy standards for car parking provision. That has been rectified within the addendum. Notwithstanding that, there's still an issue with parking regardless of the typo within the committee report. There's a deficit of on-street car parking provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Very, very full. I've also had an email from Councillor Palmer with objections and with officers agreeing with officers' recommendation for refusal. Who wanted to? Councillor Brightman, you wanted to indicate first?
Thank you, Chairman. A very good report from Nesha, and I have to say I agree with absolutely everything in there. And if that was next door to me, I'd be quite upset by it. So I'd go with officers' recommendations.
Councillor Goffin.
Thank you, Chairman. Given that this has already been done, so this is a retrospective application, would we be within our remit to actually sort of say, right, you didn't apply for a planning permission, we will take it down?
I think Nisha said that you want to answer that. I know you do.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Yes, so there's an ongoing enforcement investigation that's running alongside this planning application. So once members have decided, made a decision on this application, that would allow the Enforcement Department to continue their investigations if this application was refused tonight by members. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Secondly, given the sort of extent of the report, I will second.
Okay, fantastic.
Reason for refusal.
Thank you. So I have proposed and said, Councillor North, did you wish to speak? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I did look to you first, to be fair. They all saw it.
I'm not complaining.
No, right, yeah.
I'm just amazed that this application has come to us and not been withdrawn. It's an absolutely appalling application, and I point out the fact that we've got a 5-year housing supply, and there's no way that if we approve this, we should be sacked as a planning committee, Mr. Chairman.
I totally agree. I just feel embarrassed that it's in Fairfield. That's the only thing for me. But anyway, so I've proposed and I've been seconded. Can I have a show of hands, all those agreeing with officer's recommendation or refusal? That's it, unanimous. Okay. Nisha, that's fine, great. Next item. Okay, the next item is item 13, Old Orchard Lodge Parkway, Fairfield. 2 in my area already. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this application at Old Orchard Lodge seeks to erect a 2-storey detached dwelling house with a habitable basement space and associated parking and landscaping. The application has been referred to Planning Committee because the site is located within the Greenbelt. The application site is a previously developed parcel of land to the south of Park Lane, the bird's eye view gives you a better context. As can be seen from the constraints plan, the site lies within the Greenbelt and Fairfield Village Conservation Area. The site used to comprise a single-storey outbuilding known as Old Orchard Cottage. Here are some photos of the outbuilding. This outbuilding has been demolished, and that was as part of the commencement of the implementation of the planning permission granted in 2016 for the erection of a new 4-bedroom detached house. Members should note that this implemented permission represents a fallback position. So, this current application is a resubmission following the refusal of an application in 2020 for a 2-storey dwelling with a habitable basement with associated parking and landscaping. An appeal was lodged against the previous refusal, which was subsequently dismissed by the Secretary of State. The grounds for refusal are noted in the committee report, but just to summarise, in terms of the previous refusal, it was concerns about the harm it would have to the Greenbelt and also harm to the conservation area. I'm just going to talk you through the changes that have been made. So, following negotiations with officers, the scheme that is before us this evening has been revised to address the concerns raised by the inspector in the dismissed appeal decision. To summarise the changes, the width above ground floor and height of the proposed dwelling has been reduced to more closely resemble the width and height of the previously approved scheme. So just looking at the site plan, the blue outline shows the scheme that was previously approved by the council, and the ground floor footprint, the black line represents the current scheme that's being considered as part of this application. The site is going to be accessed by the shared driveway, and that's existing, and 3 on-site car parking spaces are going to be provided. One of the key differences between this scheme and the 2016 approved scheme is the basement, so I just wanted to draw members' attention to this. So it's acknowledged that this scheme is proposing a basement. However, the basement would not be visible from any public vantage points nor from adjacent neighbouring land. It is therefore considered that the basement's impact on the visual aspect of openness of the Greenbelt would be very limited. So this is the ground floor plan, and this is the loft plan, which includes the 4 bedrooms. And that's the roof plan. So, the barn-inspired design of the proposed dwelling would be similar to the previously approved dwelling. The proposed dwelling would be externally finished in a mixture of timber cladding and brickwork, and this would be secured by condition should members be minded to approve this application. I'd just like to note that officers have negotiated changes to do with the external materials to ensure that the design and appearance of this dwelling respects the rural character and the surrounding Greenbelt context of the site. To summarise, in terms of residents' consultation, the council has received 2 objections from residents. These objections primarily concern the harm to the character and appearance of the area and neighbouring residential amenity. These representations have been acknowledged in Section 6 of the committee report and addressed within its main body. To summarise the committee report, the proposed development is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt by definition. officers consider that the proposed development would have a moderate impact on the openness of the green belt. And this is important just to explain to members. So whilst we are of the view it's inappropriate development, it is considered that the fallback position should be considered and be given significant weight. And in terms of very special circumstances, we believe that this fallback position represents a very special circumstance. So just to finish this presentation meeting, it is considered that the proposed dwelling causes no greater harm to the greenbelt compared to the approved and implemented 2016 application. Accordingly, given the clear fallback position available to the applicant, officers consider that no additional planning harm arises from the proposed scheme, and the planning balance is considered to be the same. Looking at the case as a whole, it is considered that very special circumstances exist to justify inappropriate development in the greenbelt. It is therefore considered that the principle of the development is acceptable. The proposed development would not unduly impact on the living conditions of neighbouring occupiers. The proposal would provide a satisfactory provision of internal and external amenity space for future occupiers. The highways officer is satisfied that the proposal would not present a risk to road safety, hinder the free flow of traffic, or lead to parking stress. Officer's recommendation for this application is to approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Okay, I'll open it to the floor. See, Councillor Morse, Councillor Dogwell.
I'll ask a question. The first question I ever asked the planning committee in 1994 was how much of a scheme has to be implemented to do condition 1. Now, because of the arguments presented in this report, do we have proof that the original application has been started and has met the 3-year limit?
I'll let Nisha do it, because I think because they've knocked down the existing buildings, then that they have complied with the first part of the thing. But I could be wrong. Go on.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. It's a matter of fact and degree, but as Councillor Higgins has correctly stated, that the applicant has demolished the existing outbuilding at the site, and they've also provided photographic evidence of the works that they have completed in order to implement that permission. So officers are of the view that the previous 2016 permission has been implemented. Thank you.
Sound a bit like a note. I sound a bit of a know-it-all. I don't really mean to be that way. Any other? Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points from me. The first one is we know planning members don't like basements, or some don't like basements. Can't think of that is. But I do note that condition 7 covers that off, and I think that should give us some comfort that we were covered off of flooding and any other side effects that might come from a basement. The other point I wanted to raise was in relation to a comment that's on page 176 in relation to a sound insulation condition, given its proximity to what is a very well respected and known public house, the Old Orchard. I just wondered is that in the conditions anywhere, or is that something that's dropped off, or is it sort of weaved in somewhere else?
It's a very good question.
Sorry, I'm just going to have a look at the conditions. Bear with me. Thank you.
I couldn't find it, so.
Rosie found it.
Okay, so members, if you refer to condition number 19, so it's prior to commencement of development above ground level, details of suitable sound mitigation insulation to be incorporated. Yeah.
No, perfect, thank you. That was just me not reading correctly, but I think on that basis, with an approved application with a much improved scheme, with a very detailed report, I'd happily move officer's recommendation.
Okay, so I propose Councillor Villana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to see that trees will not be removed or damaged, no risk to road safety and any stress on the parking. And of course, the character of the local area will be safeguarded, so I'm happy to second.
I am proposed and seconded. I still don't like basements, but that's not going to change. I think they've got a free hit on this one, but we won't go there now. Can I have a show of hands? Those agree with the officer's recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Is that noted, Nisha? Yep.
Thank you.
Item 14, which is Willow Sleeve Farm Kennels, Spout Lane North, Stanwell Moor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this application is to reuse... Oh, sorry.
Councillors, can we have a bit quiet, please? Thank you.
So this application is to reuse, refurbish and extend an existing building at Willowsea Farm Kennels. And it's to create it's called in the report, in the application, a remote internal temporary storage facility. Essentially what this is it's a building that will act as border control storage and a handling point for animals which have not yet been cleared for customs or are being prepared for export. So it's where if animals are going on on a flight from Heathrow, so there is a need for such a facility due to Brexit, increased animal movements and the existing animal handling capacity at Heathrow. So no objections have been received for this application. The reason it's been referred to committee is simply because it's in Greenbelt. So if I just go through some images to show you where the site is. So the building itself is down in the corner, but the entire site is used by the applicant. Let me just show you. So this is Spout Lane here, and this is the building here. And if you're on the road, this is the building, single-storey building. Just some more pictures internally. At the moment they're using it. Part of the workshops is to construct kennels for travel kennels. So this is the building here, and this is the extension. So they're proposing to renovate, reuse the existing building and to build this extension down here. Okay, so the development would make good use of an existing building within close proximity to Heathrow. And whilst the site is located within the Greenbelt, it's considered that very special circumstances exist which would outweigh the limited harm which would arise from the small scale of the proposal. These very special circumstances are discussed on pages 188 to 190 of the committee report, but essentially they can be summarised as the reuse of a building, a demonstrated need for the facility, limited alternative sites given the security restrictions around Heathrow, as well as economic, environmental and animal welfare benefits. So the application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Councillor Alano.
Mr. Chairman, without any delay, subject to any conditions, I'm happy to move with the officer's recommendations.
Fine, thank you very much. Councillor Morse.
I have one question. This is, going by the slightly ambiguous, this is a temporary permission, and we haven't put on a time period for review. It's not a temporary permission.
No, it's not. No, not.
Because the way it's worded, to create a remote internal storage facility.
Essentially, it's a reference to the animals only being temporarily stored. So it's a permanent consent.
Good. I'm privileged to ask questions without you guys knowing, but I just wanted to make sure it was, it was compliant with welfare of animals and all that, So I don't want us to be, put up before the beak saying that we don't look after animals. We love animals. So Councillor Vera, do you have another question?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, my concern also was similar as well, because I misunderstood when it said remote internal temporary storage facility, and I took it for how long are we? But now I understand.
They are temporarily there because they are going on their lovely vacations to some sunny climate and thing. Councillor Moore.
Thanks.
This is a substantial increase in size in the Green Belt.
I don't think so. I think we're only renovating a building. Yeah, but we're renovating a building that's already in existence. But I'll let officers come back again. I shouldn't keep answering your questions. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, if I could clarify. So one of the exemptions relating to Greenbelt is if there's like a modest or sort of subordinate extension. So we took a conservative view that this was relatively large in terms of the footprint, and that's why we've concluded that by definition it's an appropriate development. But then we need to sort of take the next step, which is to consider what harm, if any, would arise. And an officer's view is that given that this is quite a sort of built-up site, and that it's sort of relatively screened, and although it looks quite large on there, when you see it on the elevations, it is quite modest in appearance. So we feel that overall the harm is very limited in this particular case. And then when we balance that with the special circumstances case that has been put forward by the applicant, we feel that it outweighs it.
Okay.
Oh, I apologise.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. After clarification, I have no hesitation of refusing, so I go with the officer's recommendation. I second that.
I have been proposed and seconded. Anybody else got any questions? No? Put your hands up. Those in favour of officer's recommendation? Just abstaining? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1 abstention. Councillor Morse. Thank you very much. Next item is item 15, which is a change of use, 13 Bakers Road, Uxbridge.
Okay, so item 15 is located within the Uxbridge Town Centre, so it's change of use of the first floor, part of the first floor from a gymnasium to 2 flats. So I just show you the building itself. So this is the building here. Different angles of the front and side elevations. So the scheme is similar to one that was previously resolved to grant by the Planning Committee in August last year. So the only differences between the earlier scheme and the current one is that the size of the 1-bedroom unit has decreased from 64.5 square metres to 59.5 square metres, so it's still compliant. And the tenure of the 2 proposed homes would be market housing rather than affordable units. So instead, a payment in lieu of affordable housing would be secured of £43,385, and that's the reason for referral to Planning Committee, because it has a Section 106 legal agreement. So if we just have a look at, so the existing plans, this is where the gym is here. So there's no objection to the principle of the loss of the gym because it's a residence gym rather than a community facility, and there's plenty of other gyms, and there are a number of other gyms within Uxbridge Town Centre. So this is it here. So pretty much the units would be dual aspect. They'll have these winter gardens here. They'll pretty much be the same as the other units that have already been approved and developed. So there'll be no changes to the external appearance of the building. So if I just flick through the elevations, the photos probably show a better image of what the building looks like. But externally, there'll be no changes. Therefore, it's recommended that planning permission be approved.
Thank you. You want to take me away? Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you. Yeah, this one's been in front of us before, and I note that it has been approved with a couple of changes. Yeah, I've got no objections to this. I mean, it would have been nice to have the on-site affordable situation, but now we're getting an off-site contribution, I guess, so at least that's something, so I'd happily move officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Borough.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I go with officer recommendation and I second that.
Okay, fantastic. So that's proposed and seconded. Do anybody have any questions? Councillor Coffin, you got a question? No? Okay. The windows are fine, aren't they? There's no overlooking issues on this, or the light into the rooms is fine, is it?
It'll be commensurate with the existing units on site that have been approved.
Okay, fantastic. So, I'm proposed and seconded. Could those, Councillor, those show, please? Thank you. Again, just abstaining. Okay, fine. All right, full house then. Is that all right, Anisha?
Well, abstaining for that one.
You got that one? Okay, yeah.
I've raised some stuff.
Next item is item 16. I think it's the last one of the evening, which is TPO. if you just want to show a picture of a tree, Kate, I think they would all say yes or no. Really.
Yeah, so this is the picture of the tree. So it's a Atlas cedar tree in the front garden of number
Beautiful
7
tree.
Sickley's Drive. Thank you.
Does anybody have proposed? Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I propose that.
Seconded. Councillor Brightman. You seconded. So all those in favour of officer reclamation? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for attending. And just hang on before we cut the feed. There we go.